The Hunter Biden pardon has so many more layers than you realize.
Hunter can no longer claim the fifth. He can't claim the fifth. You can't incriminate yourself if you've been pardoned, obviously.
We believe will show Joe Biden was communicating secretly with the shady associates that were a part of the money laundering scheme with the money from our adversaries around the world.
Hunter Biden's business was selling access to daddy. The real crook here is Joe Biden.
This isn't your father's DOJ. This is an institution run amok. You are going to ruffle feathers. People are going to be upset when you do the right thing, but take that as positive feedback.
Matt Gaetz back on the scene with a post about the Hunter Biden pardon saying, the Hunter Biden pardon has so many more layers than you realize. And we realize there's a lot there, no doubt about it. We have the book, Marco Polo's report on the Biden laptop. We've covered his trials and more. But what else does Matt Gaetz know that we don't know? Well, there's some people saying that there will be an investigation that continues forward. And one of those people is named James Comer. James Comer has been at the forefront of the Biden crime family investigation. And he got asked about this. Are you going to keep investigating and digging into this? He says,
A part of this broad pardon here means that Hunter can no longer claim the fifth. He can't claim the fifth. You can't incriminate yourself if you've been pardoned, obviously. My question to you is, do you have any plans for Hunter Biden knowing this?
Well, I look forward to talking to Attorney General Bondi about this. We still have information that we've requested that we've never received. The White House is still, to this day, obstructing rightful evidence that we should have obtained. The White House has instructed the National Archives not to turn over all those pseudonym emails, Rob. We still don't have the pseudonym emails, which we believe will show Joe Biden was communicating secretly with the shady associates that were a part of the money laundering scheme with the money from our adversaries around the world. And when you
part of this,
so he'll talk to Pam Bondi about it. We'll see what Pam Bondi says about it, and whether the immunization against federal charges that would immunize him from having or being able to declare his right to silence under the Fifth Amendment, whether that would extend against state charges or other civil claims. We would have to, I'm sure, litigate that, and his attorneys would dig their heels in defense of his Fifth Amendment right, which would likely, in my opinion, supersede the congressional testimony. We'll see. Part of me hopes that they do it because, as we've always said, Hunter is just, I think, the tip of the spear. There's much more underneath it. He was the bag man for the real nefarious actors. We'll see what Comer does. And more importantly, we'll see what Pam Bondi says about it. But Ted Cruz has a podcast, and he was on his podcast. We're trying to figure out what really went on with Hunter. And Ted Cruz has a thesis. Well, he says Hunter is a crackhead with no marketable skills. The only reason anyone paid him any money at all was to bribe Joe Biden. Here it is from Verdict with Ted Cruz. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Hunter Biden is not some lonely crackhead who just sort of went astray. That's what Joe Biden and the entire White House has tried to paint him as. Hunter Biden's business was selling access to daddy. The real crook here is Joe Biden, and this is something that in this podcast we've broken down in elaborate detail. The evidence of criminality that Joe Biden and the Biden family, they made tens of millions of dollars selling favors from Joe Biden. Listen, nobody pays a crackhead money when he has no marketable services. He was not selling anything other than daddy. So when Joe Biden is saying, oh, it is terrible, no one's prosecuted for this, number one, I'll tell you this, if you use crack cocaine with prostitutes, illegally buying guns with guns, you will be prosecuted and you will go to jail. You don't, people not named Biden don't get away with that. By the way, if you also defraud the federal government out of millions of dollars of taxes, you will be prosecuted. That is true as well.
I mean, he did arguably what Diddy did, used prostitutes, brought them across state lines. While he was in rehab, Diddy got arrested for trafficking on that. There's tons of evidence that Hunter's a violent person. There's videos of him apologizing to hookers who are cowering in the corner because Lord knows what happened. Drugs and more. So why can he walk free and escape any culpability and get pardoned by daddy while others cannot? So there's more reaction. Even Anna Kasparian over at the Young Turks is asking questions about this. And she says that she dug into this report from this person called Li Fong, who says, yeah, the pardon is 10 years. She's reading his report. It's 10 years. As we saw yesterday, we read the pardon itself. But there were a bunch of other things that could have happened there, right? The illegal firearm purchase wasn't 18. Okay, so just pardon that case. Taxes cases were about 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, so just handle those cases. And that's it. He only committed those crimes in those 2 cases. So just pardon those 2. He didn't do anything else. But no, they pardoned him for 10 years. So he could get away with anything. And here she is realizing what this means.
By the Department of Justice, okay? Because after all, the illegal firearm purchase was on October 12th of 2018.
Yeah.
Hunter failed to pay his 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 taxes on time. So what justifies going all the way back to January 1st of 2014? Well, 2014 is when he was tapped to serve on the board of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma.
Bingo.
And while Joe Biden has not been found guilty, there's no evidence to indicate that Joe Biden engaged in any influence peddling. Recent reporting from the New York Times indicates that Hunter Biden was certainly trying to engage in influence peddling. Now, there hasn't been any prosecution.
And he wouldn't be able to have done that without his daddy's name. How is he peddling influence without any influence? Hello? All right, so here was a fun post. John Harwood, one of these sneering, condescending people from the mainstream media, a journalist, so-called, and a public speaker, ex-Wall Street Journal, New York Times, NBC, blah, blah, blah. He's written books and more on. He wrote this some time ago, June 13th, 2024. He said on X, people who insist that Biden will pardon Hunter after specifically ruling it out are telling on themselves they can't imagine someone acting on principle and keeping his word. Ugh, could you imagine being so condescending and then having the man that you condescended to other people about totally obliterates you? We can't imagine people acting on principle and keeping their word. We just can't imagine Joe Biden doing it or his party because they don't care about those things at all. So he got a community note. Biden did pardon his son Hunter with a blanket pardon covering 11 years, and his term is near its conclusion. So eat your words on that one, John Harwood. Now, Ron DeSantis was also out making the rounds, and he had a nice exchange here on Fox explaining his take on the Hunty pardon.
The American people spoke on that. Here you have Joe Biden. One, he lied to the American people again, and his whole presidency has been a blizzard of lies. But he didn't just pardon his son on specific offenses or even commute the potential sentences there. He pardoned him for everything from going back to 2014 to the present. Why? Because they wanted to be able to protect against any inquiries into the Biden family business, and we know that has been subject to scrutiny for many, many years. And so this is a guy that came into office saying his predecessor was a threat to democracy, a threat to our institutions. And what does he do? He corruptly abuses the pardon power to give his son blanket immunity and, by extension, protect himself from having any inquiry. I think it's the opposite with President Trump. They manipulated the law to go after Donald Trump for political reasons. And just think about it, Laura, you've watched politics for a long time. If the electorate actually believed Donald Trump was guilty of serious federal crimes, he would not have been elected in the manner that he did. So the American people spoke, not only rejecting Biden-Harris's policies, but also rejecting the abuse of the legal process against Donald Trump. Those cases are dead. Donald Trump doesn't need a pardon. I think if Biden tried to do it, it may just be too cute by half.
Yeah.
Governor, Pam Bondi is, of course, the president's nominee to be Attorney General. She was Attorney General, obviously, of the great state of Florida. How do you expect her to take on what is desperately needed, a reform of the DOJ, and obviously a nominee for the FBI, Kash Patel? But let's start with Bondi.
Well, I think the mission there is to understand that this is an institution that's run amok, and you got to go in there, and I think Pam will. Don't try to be liked by the bureaucrats. Expect to be attacked relentlessly by the corporate press.
And that's a good sign.
Know that when that happens,
Get rid of
that's a
them.
badge of honor. That means you're doing the right thing. The bureaucrats are not going to like you. They're going to try to stifle. So you got to go in with that mindset, understanding we need major reform. And then I think you also have to go in understanding the levers of power that are available to you, because they will try to frustrate. Main justice has, of course, become a cesspool. You also have little outposts that think they're immune from accountability, like the Southern District in New York. So have a plan to be able to go bring accountability to that and restore the rule of law. There's a lot that needs to be done. I was, back in the day, a special assistant U.S. attorney 20-some years ago. It was an institution then I think we thought of a lot differently than now. So just understand, this isn't your father's DOJ. This is an institution run amok. You are going to ruffle feathers. People are going to be upset when you do the right thing, but take that as positive feedback.
Now look at what they did to you during COVID. Look at forget what they did to you from the beginning.
Yeah, they attacked him for a lot of his policies in Florida, and he stood firm, and I think he beat them. So hopefully Pam Bondi does the same, and I think that she will. Now, we also had this clip from Jon Stewart, which was an interesting montage. So I'll play a little bit of this because it's mostly about the montages that he's going to assemble for us and explain how embarrassing this is for Democrats. And it really is a nice montage because people like Jen Psaki and all the rest of them were screaming about Joe Biden's character and his integrity, and they were using that as contrast against President Trump. And turns out Joe Biden was lying to their faces.
The problem is the rest of the Democrats made Biden's pledge to not pardon Hunter the foundation of their defense of America, this grand experiment.
One political party remains committed to the rule of law and the other doesn't. It's that simple.
Hunter Biden's not above the law. No one is above the law. Democrats stand for the rule of law.
We accept the outcome because that's how the rule of law works.
Because the justice system that convicted his only surviving son is the same justice system he's vowed to protect.
Wow.
And if that doesn't tell you who Joe Biden is, I don't really know what does.
I think I know what does. And now look at the dance Democrats have to do.
Be honest, the only reason why they went after Hunter the way they did, and I've talked to many federal prosecutors about this, is because he's the president's son.
People have to remember the president has lost 2 children already, and he does not need to lose another one to more political witch hunts.
The, crowing from Republicans, but we're talking about, Donald Trump is a convicted felon who literally had pardoned his daughter's father-in-law.
He went to prison, served a bunch of time, paid his fines.
So for anyone that wants to clutch their pearls now because he decided that he was going to pardon his son, I would say take a look in the mirror.
Ma'am, we will take a look in that mirror, but we are taking off. So if you could just put this shit on airplane mode.
We gotta go.
And let us get home for the holidays.
All right. A nice montage there from the Democrats who are trying to have it both ways. They're having a hard time trying to thread the needle. Here was Schmirkanish over on CNN delivering the ruckus.
Democrats portrayed the president as this great arbiter of morality and truth. They said that he somehow was a better standard bearer for protecting norms and the institutions of our country, and yet that wasn't true. They lied. You can go all the way back to 2022 when they were asked this question, and the White House continuously, consecutively lied over and over and over again. They could have simply said, to MJ's point, to Chuck's point, the president isn't going to put his thumb on the scales of justice. He's going to wait. He hasn't made a decision yet. Most people would have expected that. They would have respected that. I think most people, to your point, Chuck, believe if it was my child, I probably would have done the same thing. That's not the issue. Jake, the question here, the burden on the White House, I would argue, is the continuous lies. You said that you were better than this other guy. You criticized the other guy for all of these things, and now your DOJ is committing witch hunts, and this is now politicized. Well, you appointed Merrick Garland. You can't blame Republicans for that. And I can only imagine, as I've talked to a lot of Republicans, if this were Donald Trump, and I know people are going to give him a lot of criticism for the pardons he's already given, but if this were him and Don Jr. or Eric Trump or Ivanka, I can only imagine what the headlines would have been. And I will say, if you're Democrats and you're trying to walk this straight line that we're somehow better than Republicans because we care more about the future and state of this democracy, I think that's trash now. No one believes it. No one believes they've lost all credibility for the facade they portrayed for several years.
Even the people like John Harwood, who went out and vouched for them, saying, oh no, he would never, ever do such a thing, are having to eat their words.